Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Filmmakers Life, which is our podcast where we talk to filmmakers who are moving their careers right along, and we learn how they got their careers started. So I'd love for you all to meet today LazRael Lison, and we're going to learn all about his work and what he has been doing. Emily, oh, there we go. All right, now I'm seeing it the way I want to see it. So on this podcast, we're really trying to help filmmakers with their careers. And I find that most times when you speak to a filmmaker, you never hear about how they started. You always hear about what they're doing this week. I was just at an event over the weekend, and we heard from this producer whose film The Working Man with Jason Statham just came out on Friday. So it was like the next day. But how did he get there? How did he get started? How does he end up making a $100 million movie with Jason Statham? That's what I'm interested in. So thank you so much for your time, LazRael, and I'm going to learn all about you. So
the journey, it's always about
the journey. The journey, that's right. So the first question I always like to ask is, when did you first know you were a filmmaker?
Well, it always started back even before that. When did I first know that I was a writer?
Yeah.
That's where I was writing as early as 10 years old.
Wow.
And so I grew up in Arkansas, a place called Winchester, Arkansas. Little Rock, Arkansas. And I always had that passion for creating and writing, and then started with poetry and in junior high writing plays and just I got that obsession. I think I wrote probably every day of my life, writing something from probably age 12 to when I went to college.
Wow. And how did that go across with your schoolmates?
Well, I mean, people know, it's just because I was in music too, it's just the obsession.
Right.
When I was, in college, my first year, I remember on break, I'd be there writing songs on paper bags,
Wow.
Poetry. So the obsession,
yeah,
the transition going into filmmaking it all started back before that. Like if you ask Tyler Perry somebody, he would say theater, just like Denzel say theater and all that stuff. So
right. And when you went to college, did you already know you were gonna go into film, or did you study biology or something?
Well, it's like, coming from a small town, a small state, Hollywood was like, man, so far removed, but
far away.
It was like, it was a dream, It's what I hoped for. It's what that ultimately after a couple of years, and after a couple of years, it was just a natural transition for me to it's kind of interesting because I think that deep down I knew I had to do it because so.
Very nice. But so did you say what subject you studied in college?
Well, at that point in my life, I was just very confused. So I went from, like you say, business administration.
Well, that's useful for film.
But ultimately, when I came to LA, it did go to film. Ultimately, it did go to film. But when I was in Arkansas, it was like, because it was this interesting saying, when I was playing college football, and I remember when I said that I wanted to do film. People say, have you prayed about it? Right? But then when it came down to me want to go play football, which can ultimately damage your brain, they said, God is with you for that, you know, because it was a easier comprehension on how to make money, things like that. So
is that also something to do with being Black? Well, I mean, I feel as though Black people have been allowed to do entertainment, but they're definitely allowed to do sport.
No, I think it's more so the culture of the South.
Okay.
Like, you know, because if you from Texas and you from Arkansas and Kansas, those are big sports states and not so much entertainment states.
Yes.
Now times have changed a little bit since then. They have changed a little bit since then, but I just think it's more so being a product of dads from that era, you know, like dads, like, you know, can comprehend their son, you know, playing football more than he can getting on the stage and reciting poetry or some stuff like that, you know?
Right.
That's why
I know my father, you know, wanted me to be a mechanical engineer. And, you know, I think he realized when I was about 13 or 14, that really wasn't going to happen. But that would have been his preference.
But yeah, been his preference.
A mechanical engineer like him.
People see you only for what their mind can comprehend, you know, whether that's, I mean, mechanical engineering ain't bad. That's a really good field, you know? So, but they only parents, you know, sometimes, you know, you forgive them because they can only see what they can see.
Right. So, when did you move to LA, and what did you think you were going to do when you got there?
Well, you know, I was hoping when I got to LA, I moved to LA when I was in 2001. Moved to LA in 2001. And I moved out here, I transferred out here. And I remember this guy I used to watch on TV, an actor from Arkansas. And to me, he was a big, huge celebrity. My father in Arkansas, he grew up with him.
Wow, what's his name?
So he connected me to this guy. And I remember walking campus and he took me over there to show me this campus. And he said, in 5 years, you're gonna do, he said, give yourself 5 years. And I'm just getting LA. I'm like, 5 years? What are you talking about? Like, you know, because when you first come, you can't comprehend that long of a journey, you know, and just like most filmmakers, you know, like 5 years, 10 years, you know. And then you look up and I think that I started doing film. I shot my first short film that I financed. You know, I was doing a lot of celebrity training. And so, and I financed the film in 2004, short film. And you think about from that journey on, I think that I did quite a bit of things along the way, but it took about 15 years before you really start making money. That's the key. You can make films, you can do films, but when did you really break through where you actually started getting paid for your time while I sold my first film to a TV network?
Wow. Okay. I just need to go back a bit, and excuse me for this. I'm always doing this. Can we go back? So I would really like to know who the Arkansas actor was, who was a guide for you. I feel like in many ways he was a guide.
His name was Bobby McGee.
Bobby McGee. There's a song named.
He came in through Robert Townsend.
Okay.
So he was like, he had like a little role in Five Heartbeats and I watched him on Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. You know, back then growing up, you know, I was when you know, when I first got to LA, I thought like, wow, he's a huge star, you know?
Yeah. Well, French Prince of Bel-Air, and I mean, I think Robert Townsend, I think the Hollywood Shuffle.
Yeah, he was on Hollywood Shuffle.
I think Hollywood Shuffle for me, now that I'm thinking about it, something happened to me when I saw Hollywood Shuffle. something happened to me. And I think it was something to do with, oh, wow, regular people make films.
Yeah, I know. It was a big deal back then. The big thing
Yeah,
was Robert Townsend paid for his film on his credit card.
that's right. That's
That was
right.
that was the big thing. But it's like now, many years later, I'm like,
No, don't do it.
well, I mean, but I think I mean, we all have been there. Like I know
Yeah,
we
yeah,
was. I mean, sometimes you got to do what you got to do.
right,
I've been there a couple times. I
right,
won't do it now anymore.
right,
But
right.
in order to position yourself where you don't have to do that, you got to be. Most successful people that I know, really successful people, are always their biggest investors at first, because you got to be willing to invest in yourself before you can ask somebody else to invest in you or sometime, especially in film, because film is it's not a, it's such a different business than anything else. Anything else you could say, okay, 1 + 1 is 2.
Uh-huh.
Like, okay, if I'm selling potatoes, I can say, okay, potatoes cost, I buy them for a quarter a piece and I can sell them for $1. You can comprehend that. And most people can't comprehend that. But film is a different beast. The first, you got to understand how to make money out of it. But your projects got to get to a point where they possess enough value where somebody going to pay you for it. And a lot of times I think people's mind got to get to the point where the level of the business, because everybody that do a film feel like it's the greatest thing in the world.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But selling it to Lionsgate, selling it to Paramount or BET, they look at, okay, that don't equate to the other actors over here. So your film, so it's about getting to that place. And that's the hardest part in the journey you got to get to. But once you break through, then then you really understand, then it's much easier.
LazRael, I am so excited to get to meet you, because you are speaking my language, and I'm I'm really into excellence. I love art. I really love filmmakers to make great films. There is nothing about me that doesn't want the best possible film in every circumstance, but without being able to speak about the business, I just think it's all kind of a waste of time. So I'm just very excited that you're talking about business. So again, I'm going to go back. So you made your first short in 2004. Sounds as if you probably paid for it yourself.
Which I must add, before 2004, 2005, I was just like everybody else. Like, I want to act. I want to model. I want to do this. I want to do that. I was like, whatever avenue can get me in the door, I take it. It wasn't until I did that very first film, it changed my life, because I'm like, after that, it was like, I know what I want to do. I don't want to do anything else. I want to be behind the camera. I was so in love with it that I knew from that point on, it was nothing else I want to do in film but be behind the camera.
Right. That's so interesting, because you started out talking about how even as such a young child, you had such a passion for writing. And so it's really interesting that later on you come across an even greater passion.
Yeah, and it's like, because I still love writing. Writing is obviously my first love, writing and directing. But I kind of like, back then when I was younger, I'd be writing and I'd be acting in it and doing things like that. And I had this great passion for acting and in college doing that. But I just realized that was the biggest transition for me. Like, I didn't want to do that no more. I just wanted to be behind the camera.
Go ahead with the directing.
Go ahead with the directing.
So you made the first short. I love that story about that short. I was just talking to a filmmaker this morning about making a short, that can be a really valuable experience. Very, very, very valuable. How did you transition from making your first short to making your first feature? I always feel as though that's the biggest mountain to climb.
Yeah, you got two different ways to go about it. You know, you go to film school route, which give you sometimes proper understanding and knowledge, and or you go like, see, with me, I did the film school route, but I didn't get quite the 100% knowledge that I wanted to possess for a feature.
Right.
So, you know, I jumped all in. You know, I was fortunate during that time. One of the girls that was in the short that I did, her parents got behind the feature along with other different methods and all that. And it was, and learning, I was over budget before I even started production. So that was the biggest learning curve ever. But I say this about myself though. I mean, when I first did that film,
And are you talking about Christmas Angel, or is this?
Oh no, Christmas. That's later. Like by the time you get to Christmas Angel and anything,
you're a professional.
Anything I sent you now, that's all studio. That's all studio right there. We talking about the journey.
Yes.
So the difference is when I did that very first film back, and that was in 2006 when I shot that feature.
Mm-hmm.
I was over budget before I started, and the film basically didn't sell initially. Initially, it was like when I finished it, a year or so later, couldn't get nobody to pick it up, couldn't get nobody to do anything, and I'm like, man, I got to make some money off the film. But the one thing the thing that I possessed back then, and this is the creative side of me right here, what I did ultimately for that film, because nowadays, this is what a growth came in at. What people do now that's different than back then is easy to like, okay, somebody say they don't want your film, right? They don't want your film. They say, okay, nobody want, I'm gonna put it on Tubi, right? I respect that, but then you don't grow. That's
well, there was no Tubi in 2006. Tubi didn't. Tubi didn't exist.
No, it didn't exist. It didn't exist.
There was no AVOD in 2006.
Yeah, not much. So people don't grow necessarily to figure out like, okay, what does my film need to make it evolve to the level that some of these bigger networks want? So what I did when I did that film, I basically went back. Nobody wanted it at first, but what I did was went back and built around that whole story that I did.
Oh, okay.
I watched movies of that genre. Man, let me add some of that in there. Let me add, I was just cheating. Let me add, I'm like, ooh, if I get a person to walk like that, let me add some of that. I did that. And then we had offers from Grindstone, which from Lionsgate.
No.
So a few years later, we ended up getting distribution, but it taught me so much about just to create. Sometimes the best part of any story is always about like what it can develop into, you know, we work with a few clients through the years where we've helped them. They brought us something, we helped them build it or whatever around a story when the film was already shot.
Wow.
And that was that's to me, that's the creative aspect of it. But rather than you need to, especially when you want to sell it to bigger companies, and they may say no the first time, but how can you get better? How can you get better to do that? And that's one thing I've learned through the years, just, you know, and learning exactly, because when you're selling something to networks and all that, it's a certain formula. It's a certain this, it's a certain that, it's a certain actor. It's a certain, you know, all those things.
LazRael, I have never heard anybody talk about that concept before. I've never come across the idea of taking a finished film and then redoing it.
Yeah. And speaking of COVID, I did that in COVID too on a project, because in COVID everything stopped.
That's right. What else did you have to do except
So
read it?
yeah, so what I did was I went in and built around a story that we did already several years earlier, and we went back and sold it, and we still make money from that to this day.
That's an amazing thing.
Because you grow, you evolve, you
Of
grow
course,
as a
of
filmmaker.
course.
You get more. It's like, man, I wish I could have did this, and
Right.
wish I could did that. You add more elements of editing in there. You add more elements of this, and you take that story, and the story becomes 10 times better. It becomes 10 times stronger. And then,
Wow. Can you tell us about this first film? Like, what, if you were to describe how it was, the first version, and then what are some things to check? Because I'm blown away by this. This is amazing.
well, the first film that I did was like, it was just like most people, you try to break in with a horror,
Oh,
right?
yeah. Okay.
You try to break in with a horror. So it just, didn't have enough time, didn't have enough elements in it.
Uh-huh.
The film writing aspect wasn't as developed.
Mm-hmm.
So when I went back, probably a few years later or whatever, basically what I did was like, when you watch all these other horror films that was studio level, because that's what I always try to do.
Yeah.
When I hired people that worked for me, especially back then, I always asked them what type of films they watch. You know what I'm saying? Because I'd rather for somebody, if you're going to do a job for me, watch stuff where you aspire to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not necessarily another person that's making low budget films
Right.
that look as cheap as yours. And so with that, it just I just made it more horrifying. Like, I made it more, I gave it every element it needed to be horrifying.
Wow. And did that mean shooting again, or
I
did you?
went back, I went back and I shot some stuff again. Uh and then like the shooting aspect wasn't that expensive, you know what I'm saying? It ain't like it is now when I shoot. But yeah, went back and shot some stuff again, whatever it takes to build around the story to make it better. I remember what Lionsgate told us. Lionsgate was like, yeah, the film is all over the place, but I see some value here. You know what I'm saying? So it's but
how did you get to have a meeting with Lionsgate at that point?
having a product, having a product, having a product that people, if people see that what you provide brings value in that moment, even if the deal don't work out with them, it's enough to warrant a meeting.
Yeah.
Because they want to see what else you got.
Right.
It's all about value, just like with anything in life.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think
and what I want to emphasize is bringing value. Just because somebody may not, and I'm learning this in the film business. It's a constantly evolving. And just because somebody don't take a meeting with you right now, that don't mean that you don't bring value. You just may be in this moment right now that they may not necessarily need what you have. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
So the key is to just constantly growing, constantly getting better, constantly striving. And everybody I know, just like when I worked with BT and I did 4 movies, I think I saw so many, either 4 or 5 to Paramount BT. And growing up, you couldn't even get access to these people. You know what I'm saying? You couldn't get access to Netflix and Amazon. But then once you do one thing and it break through, then you get direct access, just like anything,
The door is open. I think
open.
Another thing that I want to ask you about, which is, you said it's about growing, but you talked about, you made this film, you said nobody wanted to buy it, you weren't going to make any money on it, you were, and then something about you is still the kind of person who's going to get that door open at Lionsgate. Well, how would you talk about that? How are you that person that is going to keep going and keep trying and keep?
I think insanity. I think it's a little bit. I think it's a little bit of the art. It's the artist of the perfectionist and just. I mean, I just think behind everybody that succeed, oftentimes it's that never giving up, never. What can you do to get better? You know, and I think that with my motto in life, that's the way it is. Like, you know, like if you work hard at something, you know what I'm saying? Like I always tell people, if you come to Hollywood and you're working hard at something, you're gonna succeed at something. At something you're gonna see. Now the key is we all go through those struggles. Now, what I did when I went to the periods of not making money, I developed skills. That's the key.
Such as?
I became a very good editor.
Ah.
I started learning all stuff about the camera. I started getting graphic design. Not so much that I can like go out here and just be getting hired to do all that, but just skills, you know? Just skills I learned with VFX, with all these different things. And I don't do my own VFX. I have companies that do the VFX, but I learned a lot of valuable skills.
Right.
And that's the key to this business. Like when people quit something, especially if you come to LA and you say, I quit. I don't want to do that. I'm going back home and I'm gonna go all the way back to Saddlebag, Minnesota, or something like that. That means that, I mean, it could be you just woke up and realized I don't want nothing to do with entertainment. That's fine.
Right.
But if you go back and make excuses why you didn't make it, it's your fault, because that means that you didn't have the drive to expand yourself. And most people out here, a lot of people that succeed know a lot of different things about stuff. And I think that if you work hard with a never-ending spirit, you're going to succeed at something.
That's really nice.
Probably make a good living at it too. I mean, you may have come out here to do this, and you're making a good living over here doing this.
Yeah.
So that's my thing. And then ultimately, when you transition and do this, suddenly you're making enough money over here where now you can like really focus on your acting.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So, and I mean, I went through a period where before I started a company, I started another company doing those hard times while I was doing film. And that company started making like 6 figures. So what that company allowed me to do, and a financial advisor would think that's the most irresponsible thing ever, but it allowed me to go back in debt again. You know, and you know, my partner, my wife, you know, she with me as well. And, you know, we work hard through this. But when I say get back in debt again, was like, you know, I made quite a bit of money. You know, at one point I invested in a film early on, my own film. And, you know, it didn't make no money back. You know, I got like a little MG or whatever, it didn't make no money. So we got in debt from that. And then what I did, did other businesses. So I was able to get out of debt. I was able to get 100% debt free to the point of 800 credit score, you know? And then from there, I was doing so well on the other company. I'm like, man, I don't know if I want to do film again. But the drive within is so strong.
Yeah.
Because the only thing that was motivating me with that other job was film.
That's right. That's right.
And so this is what I tell filmmakers right here. You know, because by then I had embarked on, you know, we had family at that point. That was coming up in like 2018. So I knew, so I had did another short, spent a lot of money on the short. And And that one was like, it was a great film, but it didn't really go any place. So I'm like, I got one internally. You know how in life, when people say, you know, when this is it, this like this is it. I done did everything I possibly could. One more time. That's what it was. Like, one more time. And then I took the money, put money into a film, and I partnered with someone else. We partnered with someone else. But I learned, it ain't just like I put into any film. You know, I learned strategic thing of a formula that I've never done before. Never done before. And people tried to talk me, you know, other friends tried to talk me out of it. And it's like, but I knew this was it. If I didn't make it for this, it was the film called Never and Again.
Okay.
And I'm like, okay, this is it. I know if I don't make it here, I got to figure out something else, you know? And that's the film that broke through. That's the film that sold and made the most money right there. And first time, sold to Paramount BT.
Wow. And this was Never Again?
Never and Again, yeah.
Never Again.
So my story to people in life is like, I remember early on in my career, I would say like, I'm done. But the universe, God know internally, you say it, but sometimes people say it just to listen to people give them sympathy.
Right.
But then it's times in life where God know.
Yes.
Everybody, this is it. You know, like, okay, maybe you tapped out, maybe you just got that new foreclosure notice. You know you don't have a choice but to quit. And your bags are already packed to leave on the 11 o'clock train. So you know this is it. And that's sometimes the place you need to be.
That is
sometimes
awesome.
the place you need to be. And that's, for me, that was, in that moment, that's the moment right there that went from doing one movie, like sometime I'll be doing a lot of different things, but features wasn't that easy to come by then, since that movie came out in 2021. I think we did like 7 features since then. So that's what I'm saying. So since when that door opened, it's like boom, 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 boom.
What I'm hearing in your story, I don't know if this word resonates, but I've been thinking about this word a lot recently, which is standards. That there's a point in life where we come, and maybe it's something really hard or something where we're just like, you know what, this is my new standard. That's it. I'm going for this standard, and that's where I am from now on. That's what I heard. What was the formula? You said it was a formula that you hadn't done before. Did you say formula?
Well, I had to. I had done before that. I had done like, as they call it, I had done more mainstream everything. You know, I was following the stereotypical Hollywood format. You know, like when we sat down with Lionsgate at that time, they like, you can't put no Black people as your leads.
Oh.
You can't do this. They ain't gonna make no money here. So conditioning, that was my whole philosophy, because everybody that we was around was telling us that in the studio system. You can't do this, you can't do that.
What year are we talking about here?
That was like 2013.
Oh my God. I used to run a cinema. I'm trying to think about when. I think we closed it in like 2005, and the studios always told us, you know, there are no Black audiences. And I was like, you know, it's really odd, because the cinema I ran was on Miami Beach, and then if you drove across the causeway, which is like 5-10 minutes drive, I would go to my local cinema where everybody in the cinema was Black.
Yeah.
And then I'd go to work, and the studios would say there are no Black audiences. And then I would go across the bay, and there was a whole entire, you know, 8-plex or something of Black people watching movies.
Yeah, and that was the, and it's interesting. One of my British friends at the time, he the one that told me, like, Dredd, what? He said, Dredd, what? Why don't you do this, do that? I'm like, bro, you can't do that. You can't do that. And so, and I followed a systematic formula, which was great, because the reason why I love the avenue I went, because when I knew when I was doing everything, say mainstream as they call it,
Yeah.
I knew you had to compete, whether consciously or subconsciously.
Yes.
Even if you couldn't afford Ethan Hawke's, you competing with a film with him as the lead.
Yes.
So when you go and get the typical, like a Judd Nelson or whatever,
Right.
a Patrick Wilson, whatever you get, you are basically competing. So your whatever work you do got to be at such a high level, because you're competing with a big pool of everybody. And then I know more filmmakers over there in the mainstream market that ain't making no money, because it's so far in between at that point,
Right. It's interesting you're talking about this, because I also, again, I'm thinking about this word standards. And when I have my first meeting with my new clients, I take them through this process of evaluating the film. But part of what I'm doing is I'm showing them, now that you're a professional filmmaker, you are now in the industry with Ethan Hawke, with Judd Nelson. It's just the way it is. It's just the way it is. It's no longer, well, I like my film, so it's good. It's like we are in the same industry as all of those people.
Yeah, exactly. So when I did, so the only thing that I never did, and again, I mean, I gained a good reputation as a director throughout the whole process, all these years, but it wasn't equating to money. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't like, because Hollywood has a way of, like we always say, like, I remember when I first got to LA, I did extra work a couple times. And they said, and I was like, why do they keep putting me as a pedestrian? You know what I'm saying? And because they put you as whatever they see you as. If you come there dressed like a pedestrian, they put you as a pedestrian. If you come there dressed like a doctor, they put you as that. And I just think in Hollywood sometimes, people, every film that I've directed that have made, that have pretty much been like, because I did so many different movies, but then after I sold Never and Again, then I did the one thing that I never wanted to do. And I'm like, when they told me about a Christmas movie, I'm like, a Christmas movie? And then when I did that one blew up to be so big. But then I want to do another one and another one. And the point is, like, sometimes people see you doing one thing until you show them you can do something else.
I see.
And that's why I branched off and did that most recent one, Finding Faith. But let me say this, get back to what you were saying. Like, so with all of this right here, now I want to be, did everything. And then I'm like, I did that a nice budget short film that has some controversy to it. Very good film, very good film. But then the only film I've never done before, out of everything I've done, I never done a film with targeted, specific network, with actors that I knew was big on that network.
That network. Oh, yeah.
And then I'm like, okay, let me get maybe some African Americans, but not just Ted from your cousin.
Right.
People that are known. So that's why I want to get clear. People think, because you say this, you talking about their sister or they person that they know that so happy can act. No, it's got to be recognized by people within the network. But that was the one thing I never done before. Specifically targeted.
Yes.
Targeted like a market.
Right. And which film was this? Which film?
Never Again. Never Again.
Okay, and who was the actor?
That was, I went out, Denise Boutte.
Okay.
Jackie Long. It had a lot of very recognizable people that most whites may not know.
Okay.
But 85% of Black households know.
Are gonna know.
And they fans of, you know?
Right. And were those actors already on BET, or was it?
They was all, some of them was very familiar working through BET.
Yeah.
And some of them, like, my parents grew up with. That's the key. That's the key. Like, it's almost like, you know.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like, they was like people that most people, like a large percent of non-Black people knew them, but the majority of Black people knew them. Right. And that's the key right there. So, and that's when I learned that this ain't just a BET Paramount thing. It's a Hallmark thing. You know, we're dealing with Hallmark. Hallmark have specific actors, non-Black actors, white actors that they work with. So you know, if you're trying to sell a film to Hallmark, study their roster. Yeah. Study their roster, so you know, okay, if I go get this person, Hallmark love this person. Or
I can go over to my friend's house who watches Hallmark all day and have her pick out the actors for me.
Exactly.
Because those fans are rabid fans.
Exactly, and that's the key that I learned, and that's the film right there that I followed a certain formula. Yes. And that's the film right there. You know, you added in some faith elements and all that, and that's the film right there that really, that's the one thing I never tried before. Right. Oh, I love it. I never tried before, and that's what. Yeah. I know we haven't quite got to this film yet, but I want to show a trailer, and Emily's gonna show the trailer for now I just had it written down, for Style Me for Christmas, which just came out this last Christmas. So just watch this trailer. I know we haven't quite got here in the story, but we're a bit out of order, but go ahead, Emily.
Teddy Maxwell is fine.
I'd do anything for the opportunity to style him.
Jeff, if you ever go before him, please don't go looking like a plain Jane. Ow.
Teddy, you can't keep having these one-night stands with these random women and expect to keep a clean image. What you need is a long-term woman by your side. You're Mrs. Claus.
No, 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 no!
They're doubling the rent come January. I'm gonna be selling clothes out of my car. I really need a Christmas miracle.
Boutique de ma mère.
Hello, this is Teddy, Maxwell's manager. We'd love for you to be his stylist.
You want me to style the Teddy Maxwell?
Yes.
You don't think it's weird that they chose me? Excuse me. Out of all of the stylists out there?
This is where I cut the line. She's plain.
She's exactly what you need. She's the one that's gonna help your image.
You going like that?
Look who's coming in hot. Tiffany's gone viral.
Oh.
Their outfits are so last season.
She looks like a broke auntie. Excuse me?
I don't understand how people can be so cruel. She's literally the sweetest woman I know. It's the first time I felt like somebody looked past my celebrity and seen me for me.
Your album sales are increasing. Project Change Teddy's Playboy image is working.
Cole, I told you this was over.
Teddy and his momager needed to clean up his Playboy persona. They played you, boo.
You need to fix this.
I styled and stupidly fell for a certain R&B singer. I'm Tiffany Ford, a designer deserving of respect and love.
I can't wait to catch his ass. Come on!
That is an awesome trailer. That is. Do you have any input on the trailers?
No. No, I leave
I
that
just love what.
strictly with the network.
Yeah.
My job is to give them enough good material.
Right.
Yeah,
Um,
that came out to be a very good movie.
wow. And was that Mario's break into acting, or
Mario did. That was his. He done did a lot of stuff. He just kind of like on Empire. He did a lot.
Okay, yes. Now I realize, yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So what now that you've sort of hit on the Christmas thing and the faith films, and is that where you think you're going to stay moving forwards, or what do you think?
I mean, no, not really. I like to be very versatile, because I got other stuff I'm writing too. The one that we got coming out now, the next film that's in post-production, that's coming out pretty soon. That had a great cast in it, and I'm very proud. I'm proud of a lot of my work, but that was a very, very big one.
Can you say the name? Are you allowed to say the name of it?
Finding Faith.
Finding Faith.
The lead actress name is Faith.
That's right. The lead character's name is Faith.
That was starring Paula Patton and Loretta Devine, Keith David, Nadine Velazquez from Flight, Stephen Bishop, who else? Quite a few. I mean, Demetrius, Grosse, like a lot of very recognizable, pretty big people in that one. And, so we had the van explosion, street shut down and everything. So that was a really big one.
The van turning over and oh my God. There's so many things I want to talk about, but I also want to open it up.
Yeah, we don't want to say too much.
Last question about, because I think you've worked with Keith David now multiple times. Twice. Okay. And I'm a big fan of Keith David, partly because when I look at his credits, I just see him working all the time. And every time I look at his credits, I'm like, damn, that guy loves to act.
He is such a, wow. I became so impressed with him. I worked with him first on A Miracle Before Christmas. And, and I became a diehard. I know everybody, when you see people with these long careers, everybody can pick what point they became a fan. And there was one TV show that was on Oprah's channel that I called Greenleaf, that I became a huge Keith David fan again. And to the point, like, even as a director, you got to catch yourself from looking at them as the actor, you know what I'm saying? Looking at them as the character, you know what I'm saying? Because I remember we worked on Miracle Before Christmas, I was like saying pastor. Like sometimes when you have prayer before, sometimes you just have prayer before you start or whatever. I almost want to ask him, would you like to pray? and
you like to lead us in prayer.
And he's such a phenomenal guy. I'm not gonna say whether he did it or not, but sometimes actors know, like they could be, who knows, they could be totally different in the character in real life. Like, no, man.
That's right.
Yeah.
Let me see if anybody wants to ask a question, because I could just talk all day. Tatiana, nothing? Oh, come on. There you go. So good to see you.
Hi, LazRael. I'm Tatiana Bacchus from Philadelphia, multi-hyphen, and I guess, I've been working with Joanne for a few years now. So I'm really, I love hearing your story, because I have a feature-length family film called Christmas Crossing, which I'm looking to make about 11-year-old Black girl who on a school field trip realizes that there were free Black soldiers that helped Washington cross the Delaware and wonders why she never learned this history, and decides that she wants to become one of the reenactors that goes in the boats at the annual Christmas crossing. And so I'm also writing and I've written and sold a screenplay to a production company that was supposed to be put up at Lifetime in 2021 and got caught up in development. So I'm at this interesting crossroads of making my own and being picked up to write for opportunities for production companies. And then something interesting happened. I work with a grant writer and we picked up a production company in Florida. And I mentioned kind of my background, you know, and the getting to know you. And the principal said, I'd love to make a Christmas movie. And I got nothing but Christmas movies that I've been writing and pitching and developing. So my question to you is, I know that the people that we work with have output deals with Lifetime, with Hallmark. They already have their deals in place. So I'm pitching to see if I can become one of the films that gets picked up. Knowing that I have this opportunity with this new production company, or this production company where the guy is ready to go shake the money tree, is making a bunch of things, but may not have that relationship with a studio because this is something he wants to do because he hasn't done it before. How can I help him? You know, obviously bring him a project that makes sense, right? I'm taking that note about if we're going to go to a particular platform, who are the actors, right? Build that package. How do I help him? You know, because they're going to see him as the primary, not me. So what recommendations, if you were now—
So primary, when you say the primary?
Because he's going to be the producer. He's going to be the one that has the money. I'm going to bring him the project. So if we're collaborating on something.
Well, I think that I think always so it's finance, correct? Is he bringing the financing, you say?
He's bringing the financing, and I believe he would be producing it. So I would bring him the idea, write the script, but I'm thinking distribution from the front end. You know, I want to support him in getting in a door, getting the conversation going, and having the strongest chance of them actually completing the deal, as opposed to making this film and then trying to shop it around.
Well, I guess, you know, if it's already, you know, if the because a lot of times, especially when you're new, you know, a lot of people ain't gonna guarantee much, you know, and I experienced that a lot. They're not gonna guarantee much, but if you got a very good package together, you know, you got a very good, you know, first off, I always say this right here, you know, and that's what I always learn when you're dealing with, when I've dealt with the studios, you know, they always ask for, if you got a screenplay, they want to see the synopsis first, then the treatment, you know. And I always say, get the script 100% where, you know, like, okay, we sold on the idea first, you know. And the idea, then you go out, and then you kind of, because most likely people ain't going to guarantee you anything.
Right.
But what they will do is sometimes they'll let you, if they see the potential there, they can kind of develop it with you without guarantees.
Yeah.
And that's what you're hoping for. Okay. Because I dealt with that too. Develop it with you without guarantees, but at the same time, they may tell you certain names they like. And then if you get certain names they like, more than likely, you know, they'll be interested in picking up the film.
Okay.
You know, and things like that. But I wouldn't, you know, if people, because a lot of times you deal with financiers, they want the guarantee they're gonna get their money back. They want like the letter of intent saying we're gonna give $5 million, and you ain't gonna get that, because not until a lot of times you get into their system.
Yeah.
Once you get into that system, you know, in a lot of these films, I wouldn't honestly, for a lot of these type of movies, I wouldn't go and spend no more than like maybe, you know, you can go and do them for relatively cheap too, you know.
What would you consider relatively cheap, LazRael?
Well, I guess it depends
making
on
their first feature, for somebody making their first feature. I know the number I have in my head, but
Relatively cheap. For again, it comes down to this right here, because my definition of relatively cheap may be different, because within my company I do a lot. We got a lot of already team developed and things like that. So but if everything you're hiring, a person, if you like, for example, if you need to hire like 10, 20 other people, like to handle accounting, all the daily things, then it can get up there. But I think honestly, with a holiday movie, I probably wouldn't go no more than 800 grand. I wouldn't do that, because a lot of these networks ain't gonna spend. They're not gonna. I mean, they may spend like up to 1.5 million.
Right.
And always keep this in mind too. The actual initial acquisition will always be much cheaper in purchase than the follow-up. So when somebody buy your first film, and it's different if they develop it with you.
Right.
If they develop it with you, but the follow-up film, once you're in that system, the budget would actually get bigger.
I want
this is learned through trial and error.
That's right. No, gold. This information is gold, and I want to see if we can have time for Ray's question. But I want to say one thing to you, Tatiana. I absolutely adore you. I'm hearing you put the power in somebody else's hand, and you have the power. I'm sorry, but they need to be meeting with you.
Yeah.
This other person is never going to be you, and that's what I'm hearing. They are never going to be you. They are never going to be you.
Yeah.
And you are the one who is going to impress these people and have them want to do business with you. I just have to say that. So
thank you, Joanne. That's why I love you. When we get a chance to talk about all the sparkly things, thank you, LazRael, for that answer. I'm making all the notes, but yeah, I've got Christmas Crossing. We're finalists for Dig Deep. I wrote another screenplay with my writing partner. We're waiting to hear from Set in Philly. So I'm like, this is the third or fourth film. That's why I am the one, and Christmas Crossing, I'm in those meetings.
That's right.
I'm also looking at all the doors that when they open, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna shoot that shot. Let somebody else run that, because it's just me. So, but I hear you. I hear you, Joanne. Thank you. And thank you, LazRael.
Ray, let's see if we have time for one more question. Come in, Ray.
Hi, thank you so much. I'm at work right now, and so I just wanted to slide away. I appreciate everybody's time, and thank you, LazRael, for just being honest and real. I can relate to everything you said. I'm a writer, director, and producer, did 2 feature films. I'm fortunate to work with Joanne right now, and I'm currently loving writing family-friendly, faith-based films, holiday films. I have 2 feature films that's already on streaming platforms. My current film that I'm working on now is called Happy Thanksgiving. And that is about a revered Hollywood celebrity who dies on Thanksgiving Day after revealing a family secret. And now her resentful and dysfunctional family must put on her funeral and a reality show. And so I love the idea of what you did with Never and Again. I'm a big fan of Christian Keys and Jackie Long. And I'm just curious of how you were able to secure the budget. I don't know if I heard that part. How did you get the funding for that? And then how did you go about reaching out to those actors to get them attached? So that would be something I'm interested in, because I want to get my films on BET Plus and on All Black. So what you're saying is just right up my alley, and I reached out to you on LinkedIn, so I hope we can connect.
Okay. Well, that going back to what I was saying earlier, during that time, that's when, the whole point, when I was getting out of debt, and then you create more debt. That was one that we had a partner company came in, but we pretty much put up the majority of equity ourselves in that film. Yeah, that was probably the biggest. When I look back at it now, I'm like, wow, that was insane. Like, cause it could have been totally lost all of it. But, but you don't think about it till after the fact when you look back. But that was, and I had a casting director. And it was just timing. I mean, the hardest part of that film was casting. We had Denise Boutte at first. We had her at first. We had her a couple months before, and then the hardest part was casting the guy, the Jackie Long character. We went through multiple people. You didn't have a whole lot of money to work with. So I look back at the numbers that we was paying people, like, wow, that was cheap, But then, after that, we had, Vanessa Simmons, and we had all these. It was like a chain reaction. We was casting all the way until probably midway through the film, like most people do.
Wow. Wow.
And then we basically, I think Kristen Keys signed on later. It was just a domino, just like it's always like once you cast the leads and everything else kind of like falls in place.
Fantastic.
Wonderful.
But
Thank you for sharing.
we had a casting director that actually was doing the reaching out.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we had what happened was we had a casting director that, and then once we casted, once we had Denise, then all of a sudden her manager all of a sudden got involved, and he the one ended up helping to cast like 2 other essential roles was through him.
Awesome.
Hey, I'm so glad you got to sneak away to ask a question at work.
Yes, thank you. This has been very informative. I'm excited.
I knew you would be. Mark, did you have a question or?
Yeah.
Oh, awesome.
So, LazRael, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. It's really inspiring, and it's really great to see that a lot of hard work is paying off, and you're succeeding with what you're doing. I'm an independent filmmaker. I've been primarily working with documentary films for PBS. And of course, I'm making 2 transitions. I'm finishing my second feature film, and the third film is going to be everything else has been with a nonprofit foundation, and everything's been broadcast with PBS. So what we're doing is we're switching. I want to do my next film is a dramatic film with actors, and it's going to be for profit. So I'm making going from not-for-profit to for-profit, and we raised $500,000 for the first film and a little less than that for the second film, and now we're just trying to getting ready to finish this project and move on to the new form. And I was wondering if you had any advice about making the switch from nonprofit to investors instead of donors. I've got really good at getting people to give us money.
Question, Mark.
Well, I guess non-profit, like, I mean, I'm sure they allows you to go a little bit more. They probably a little bit easier, because when it comes down to how the story is told compared to when you deal with investors mean, like, obviously you gotta operate more within the confines of what's going to make money with the distributor.
Right.
So it's a little bit more commercial value there because I've dealt with them, and I deal with investors, and I to the point where it's just about the bottom line, and obviously when you deal with a nonprofit, it could be about seals, you know what I'm saying? Like, it could be about anything, and it don't have to have the commercial value. So I just think, like, when it comes down to investors and and distribute. If you're transitioning over here to this market, just like I said earlier, just have the target that you're aiming for and basically kind of aligning from the beginning. You can easily align with the distributor, knowing the formula, knowing what they like, knowing the type of cast they want, and as you probably noticed, don't try to change the wheel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
all do that. We all do that. I'm like, when I first started this, I'm like, I'm gonna bring something new to the game, and like,
yeah.
Sometimes it worked though. Sometimes it worked. You got the exceptions, but but always the financier be like, why you got to take all these risks with my money?
Right.
So.
Right. That's right. I've noticed that you've used the word formula several times, and I think Tatiana was the one that I really saw this the most when she was writing for Lifetime. But in so many cases in film, and it's so weird because everybody I hear in film, every filmmaker is talking about everything's different now, everything's changed, everything's different. I feel as though it's one of the most stable things, that the way that you made a film 100 years ago meant casting a famous actor and building your marketing around that actor. And 100 years later, we're doing the same thing. Exactly the same thing,
Yeah. It's definitely, I totally agree with that. It has, it definitely, I can look at it more from a business standpoint of the changes, but but it's hard to say, because sometimes I feel like I can argue for both sides. Like when I was doing Paramount, I knew what the budgets were. I knew what the budgets were, because a lot of times with each film you got the budget layout. But then when you're dealing with a new film and you're going in with an acquisition where you want them you didn't develop it with them. So obviously a lot of times when you don't develop it with them, it's cheaper when they buy it from you. So that's what I'm saying. So I can definitely see, but we all know with everything with the streaming, what's going on with the streaming right now, with the strike, it's affected a lot of things. But generally speaking, everything is the same in the sense of you do a film, you cast it good, people want to purchase your film.
That's right.
Now it just comes down to like, when you get investors involved, it's being smart how you allocate the money. So you gotta be creative. Like, okay, if you in an unsure, unpredictable market, don't try to get 10 actors and paying them, all this ridiculous money, because you may not be able to recoup that, But at the same time, you still need to figure out creative ways of getting a couple good actors, because that's how you're going to get your money.
That's right.
So it's tricky. It's tricky, but the great thing about it is like, the time you're in is that it's when you feeling it, they feeling it too. The actors want to work. You know what I'm saying?
That's right.
People. So it's one of them situations where everybody's feeling it on the market. So everybody want to make money. So you can get an actor that you probably couldn't get before for a little bit cheaper.
Right.
So that's where it comes down to, like, developing it with the studio, finding out who they like, and then at least give you 10 different options they like, and then you never know. I've seen it happen and then Mark, with your background with documentaries and everything and the nonprofit, that all helps in the sense of your value to somebody else. And so,
LazRael, thank you so much. This has just been so fantastic. I don't usually write anything. I've taken like a whole page of notes. It was absolutely fantastic. I'm telling you, right at the beginning of the interview, I'm like, oh my God, here is a man after my own heart. We get to talk business.
Yeah.
And then, you know, I have clients like Tatiana and Ray who are very interested in holiday movies, who want to see their projects on BET. I have clients like Mark who are making that shift. I have clients doing all kinds of fabulous things. So thank you.
Definitely, like with regarding BT, it's a shift going on right now. You know, with the whole Paramount merger, with the whole Paramount Skydance thing. So, you know, so definitely, you know, just send prayers up to make sure, because everybody from that network is sweating right now because everything is kind of like at a standstill because of the unpredictability. I was with BET like, and I remember back maybe last, because I had, you know, like I say, I saw when films was being greenlit and ungreenlit and everything over there. So, but over the next few months, I'm sure, I'm optimistic that everything gonna be great, but it just kind of like at the moment right now with all this merger going on and everything, so it's just kind of a little shaky. So you want to pray for BET. Pray for BET.
I just watched The Offer again on Paramount. I just watched The Offer again on Paramount, which is about the making of The Godfather.
Okay.
But of course, The Godfather was made by Paramount.
Yeah, yeah.
So Paramount made a series about the making of their own film, and it gives all this.
I gotta watch that.
You got to watch it because it's full of all these trade secrets. With all the pressure that they're getting. Back then, it was the pressure from the company that owned Paramount. They just wanted to dump Paramount. They were just dying to dump them. They wanted to get rid of it, get on with the business of making money, doing something that was more reliable. And so in The Offer, you have the story of the making of The Godfather, but there's also the story of the studio and the way they're thinking and the way the money people are thinking, and it's fantastic. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I will watch that. I'll check it out today.
Yes, awesome. LazRael, we got to keep in touch.
Thank you, definitely.
Fantastic to meet you. And thank you, Emily, as always. Thanks, Tatiana, Ray, and Mark for coming and asking questions.
It was great. Thank you. If you need anything, let me know.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.